Homeschooling isn't always picture perfect. Welcome to Homeschooling with Dr. B, where we'll help you find solutions to the challenges you face and celebrate your successes with you. Now, please welcome your host, Dr. B.
Welcome, my tenacious homeschool tribe, to our third episode of Homeschooling with Dr. B. So today we're going to talk about the one question that you will get asked more often. That is, why did you start homeschooling? Now, for many of you, given the pandemic, it's an easy answer because you can say, well, it's what I felt was currently best for our family. But for most of us, that was not the answer. Yet, the reason was not that different from yours, in that it took a catalyst. Something happened that caused us to homeschool. Yes, you're going to find families that grandma was homeschooled, mom was homeschooled, and now the kids are being homeschooled. But I haven't found that to be the norm. For most of us, something happened that caused us to make that decision, and oftentimes abruptly. If you heard episode 2, you know that both my husband and I had been briefly homeschooled and that it was not a positive experience. But we still had good feelings, good thoughts about homeschooling in general, and we had seen it done very effectively among our peers and with some of our friends' children. So we never discarded the option. However, when the girls became school age, there were several reasons that caused us to decide to put them in a traditional school setting. First, it was that we lived in a really small town. We were new to the town, and we didn't really know anybody that had kids. So we thought, okay, we'll put them in preschool. They'll make friends, they'll socialize, and we'll create a new social network, which was in fact what happened. The other reason was there were 2 really good private schools in this small town. We decided to try them out. Preschool was great in the first school we tried. Kindergarten, not so much. This had a lot to do with a new teacher that they got, a new principal, and the whole dynamics of the school changed. So we opted to put them in the second private school. And this was a really great experience. The kindergarten teacher was great. First grade teacher was great. My husband was getting a little bit nervous because this was a Catholic school. One of my twin daughters, Andy, decided that she wanted to be a nun. And while I realized that this was not a big deal, she was 6 years old and she was probably going to change her mind many, many times about what she wanted to be in the future. It panicked my husband. So he was very happy when we left Michigan and moved to Florida because we thought we would have more options. It turns out the options in the town where we moved to were limited, but there was a great Montessori school that covered pre-K to 8th grade. So we enrolled the kids in that, and we really thought at that time that the kids would probably go to school there until they were done with the 8th grade and they moved on to high school. So 2nd grade, great teacher, great experience. 3rd grade, big problem. The 3rd grade teacher that we had been looking forward to getting, and she was such a lovely teacher, great personality, great attitude, academically strong. She retired to homeschool her own child. Now, this was quite a shock for us, frankly, because her child would have been in her classroom the following year along with her kids. So the fact that she retired to homeschool her kid left us with a very unpleasant taste in our mouths. What was it about that situation, which you would have thought was the ideal situation since her kid was going to be in her classroom, that caused her to leave? that caused her to believe that homeschooling was a better choice. Now, by that time, I was retired. I was no longer a college professor, and I would have been able to homeschool. But my husband said, look, this was a great school last year. Why don't we hold off and see what this new third grade teacher is going to be like? This was a very interesting experience. We attended the teacher parent conference at the beginning of the year. We were there for 45 minutes in which this new teacher instilled absolutely no confidence. The whole time she had this nervous, high-pitched laugh. And she kept babbling about this and that. And finally, one of the parents raised their hands and said, okay, what we want to know is, what's your name? This was 20 minutes into the conversation. She had not introduced herself. So she finally said, I'm Mrs. So-and-so. Then another parent raised their hand and asked, what's your background? Oh, well, I've been teaching middle school. Oh, brother. All the parents turned and looked at each other. Have you ever taught elementary school? No, but it's not going to be a problem. I looked at my husband. And my husband is in general a Pollyanna. But I could see in his eyes, his eyebrows were raised, his eyes were wide open. He knew I was really questioning this. We asked her more questions about the school year, our options. We asked her more questions about the school year and how she was going to be handling the kids. She really had no concrete answers. So my husband and I left the parent-teacher conference. My husband quickly said to me, okay, I don't get fussy feelings about this woman either, but we trust the principal. She was a great teacher. She is a great manager. We can trust that if she hired this woman, this was a good choice. Okay, sounds like a reasonable thought process, right? We start the school year. The first problem was Andy. Andy has ADHD in the moderate to severe range, and I'm going to be honest with you. She's more up here than anything else. She's very, very hyperactive. Now, we went through a lot of discussions, and I'll probably do an episode on how we finally decided to do minimal medication. But the bottom line is, since the first grade, she's got minimal medication for her ADHD. Now, I have to tell you about Andy's personality because it makes a difference in the story. You know that old saying, follow, lead, or get out of the way? Andy always gets out of the way. She marches to the beat of her own drum. She's also a bit of a clown. She can be really funny. She can be very empathetic. But the bottom line is, that's her personality. That's not her ADHD. That's simply her personality. What really bothered me about this teacher was that she wanted me to medicate my child out of her personality. She didn't want just enough medication so that Andy could attend and so that Andy wouldn't be hyperactive. She wanted so much medication so that Andy would turn into a zombie. Almost every time I went into this classroom, she asked me to give her more medication and more medication. And her argument was always, well, she was telling jokes. She didn't want to come in from recess. Well, did the other kids want to come in from recess? No. Were the other kids telling jokes? Yes. Why should I give Andy more medication? How is she behaving differently than the other kids? Well, she has ADHD. Yes. But just because a child has ADHD doesn't mean that the child stops being a child. I seriously have a problem with that belief that you need to medicate a child with ADHD into being a zombie. So when I wouldn't cooperate with her, the next thing she did was she sat Andy next to Emmy, her twin sister, which I hate. I hate people who make Emmy responsible for Andy, especially teachers. And I had spoken to the principal about this. They were never sat together, ever. They were always on opposite sides of the room. They couldn't be in separate classrooms, which I would have chosen because these were small private schools, but at least they were far away from each other. This new teacher insisted on sitting them together and insisting on having Emmy police Andy. Now, Emmy already has a type A personality, and she's always trying to help me. So now this teacher put her in the position of parenting her sister, which I did not like, I did not appreciate, and I don't allow in our home. But the problem didn't end there. Emmy is anaphylaxis to tree nuts, which means that she can stop breathing and die just like that, because she's exposed to tree nuts. Now, this teacher insisted on doing cooking projects that had products that might contain tree nuts. Emmy and Andy were always told, well, you can't do the project, you can just sit over here. So every Friday they were excluded from the cooking project, which had never happened in the past. When I discussed it with her, she would say things like, well, I'm doing the best that I can. No, you're not. You're excluding them. You can do a cooking project that doesn't include tree nut products or products that might contain tree nuts. The other teacher was doing it. Well, that was her. This is me. Okay, so what happens if one of the kids accidentally exposes Emmy to the tree nuts? Well, that could happen, and that's a risk that you take when you have your child in the classroom. Excuse me? We make, as a society, accommodations for these types of challenges in all the classrooms. For peanut allergies, for tree nuts, for milk, for eggs. For some kids, this is a matter of life and death. But don't get me started on that. I was extremely upset by it. The catalyst was a test, a social studies test. So our kids at that point had no chores, but we expected them to get grades no lower than a B. And if they received a grade lower than a B, let me rephrase that. If they earned a grade lower than a B, they would lose the privilege. They had a field trip coming up before the social studies test, and they knew that if they got anything lower than a B, they would not be able to go on this field trip. What happens? Problem number one for me as an educator was they didn't get the study guide until the day before the test. I was really upset by this because she was basically teaching the kids to cram, not to study, but okay. So I sat with the kids and we studied and we studied. They knew the answers backwards and forwards on the study guide. And then the next day, I go to pick them up from school and Amy is in tears. She's in absolute tears. She got a C on the test. I was like, now, wait a minute. How did you get a C? And she goes, Mom, I'm telling you, the stuff that she tested us on was not on the study guide. Well, I also know that that's completely fair as an educator to test outside of the study guide. So I asked Amy, well, why didn't you take your book home? And Emmy said, what book? We don't have a social studies book. We have worksheets. We always study from the study guide. This was the beginning of the year, and I was a new teacher, so I wasn't quite aware of this new system. So I said, okay, let me look at the test. So I pull up the test, and lo and behold, the questions were not on the information on the study guide. So I go in to talk to the teacher, and I asked her, I said, Emmy tells me that there's no book. I said, that can't be true because we pay for books every year. And she says, oh no, she's right. We don't have a social studies book. What we have is a social studies binder. Why weren't the kids' binders sent home? Well, they should know to take the binders home. They're third graders. Give me a break. You need to let them know that they need to take such and such a thing home because there's going to be a test. But I didn't say anything. I said, Emmy, go get me your binder. Give me your social studies binder. I want to take a look at it. So Emmy brings it over, and I look at the binder, and the information is not on the binder. The information that she was tested on. I said to the teacher, these 5 questions were not. The information for these 5 questions is nowhere to be found on this binder. And she says, yes, it is. It's right there. I opened the binder and I said, okay, show me. Where is the information? She says to me, well, the kids need to learn to extrapolate. What? Here's the thing. I was a college professor. Freshmen had problems extrapolating. And I was a college professor at a Tier 1 university, which means one of the top universities in the country. And when they're freshmen, they're having problems extrapolating. Explain to me how if a freshman in one of the best universities in the country is struggling to figure out how to extrapolate, how are third graders going to be able to do this? It's ludicrous. It's not going to happen. But I took a deep breath because I know how I am about education. And because I know that being an advocate for my kids is something that's very important to me because my mother was never an advocate for us. So I know that's a personal issue for me. I said, now she turns and she looks at Emmy and says, now look, you don't have anything to worry about anyhow because you got a 70% on the test. And I said, excuse me? And she continues, you don't have anything to worry about unless you get a 50%. 60% is failing. If she got a 50%, we would be in serious trouble here. So I said to Emmy, first, don't worry about the field trip. You're going to the field trip. You're not responsible for the grade that you got. And the teacher looks at me with this angry face. Well, she wasn't. In order to be responsible, you need the information. She didn't have the information. I told her, don't worry about the field trip. You're going to the field trip. I want you to wait for me in the other room. So Emmy leaves, and I turn around and I say to this teacher, don't tell my child that it is acceptable for her to get less than a B. That is not acceptable in our household. My husband and I have worked very hard to provide a private education for our kids. We have certain rules and expectations in our family, and failure is not acceptable. When your only responsibility is to be a child and enjoy your childhood, to do well in school. That's it. It's the only thing you're responsible for. And she said to me, I feel really sorry for your child. Oh, I wanted to throttle her. Instead, I said, I need the ISB numbers of the books that you're using to create the worksheets. And she says, but why? What do you mean, why? You're not providing the book. I'm going to go to Amazon. I'm going to get the book. I'm not kidding to you when I say education is very important to me. She dithers, and I'm wondering, what's your problem? Why aren't you giving me the ISB number? She finally gives it to me, and I go home, and I tell my husband everything that happened, and my husband's like, okay, I agree, and we should go on this field trip. It's not her fault. you need to talk to the principal because we need to figure out exactly what's going on. We paid for books. Why don't they have books? I ordered the book on Amazon. When I order it, I notice that it's a 7th grade book. They're in the 3rd grade. It's not a 4th grade book. It's not a 5th grade book. It's a 7th grade book. 4 grades different. Now, I believe in having high expectations educationally and in general for children, but a 4 grades difference, it's just too much. I went and I spoke with the principal who said, well, we don't buy new books every year. I get that. No, I don't. We paid for the books. Our kids should have new books. But that's a totally different argument or story. The bottom line is, she said, well, she's a great teacher. And if you just give her a chance, this is an adjustment period for her and it's an adjustment period for the families. But the thing was, it wasn't one thing. It was the tree nuts. It was the challenges with the ADHD. It was the 7th grade book. I went home and I said to my husband, well, this is what she said. And my husband said, the field trip is coming up. Let's go to the field trip. We'll take it from there. We'll both talk to the principal. I am an older mom. I did think I was never going to have children. In fact, several doctors told me that. So my twins are absolute miracles in her life. And I am a very involved parent. He was right. It could be me being overly sensitive. He tends to be more even keeled about these things. We go to the field trip, and he has an opportunity to speak with both the principal and the teacher. And my husband, who was very concerned about the idea of homeschooling our kids, turned around and said to me in the middle of this field trip, pull the kids out and start homeschooling. I was like, what? Pull them out tomorrow. Go talk to the principal. Pull them out. We're done. Start homeschooling. And I was like, wait a minute. I need to get my supplies. I need to get the books. I need to figure it out. He was like, nope. It's now or I don't know if I'll be able to say yes again. Just do it. Do it. Now or never. And I realized that because of his own experience homeschooling, this was probably true. It was a now or never opportunity for me. So I said, okay, we're on. But that doesn't mean I didn't have some serious concerns. So here, a professionally trained teacher had not been able to deal with the ADHD. Was I going to be able to deal with that? The tree nut issue, no problem. But how was it going to be having just 2 kids working together? They needed to be socialized. How was I going to get them socialized? And where was I going to find all of these materials that I didn't have? Lucky for me, my best friend had been a 3rd grade teacher. She had retired from teaching to become a social worker, and she had tons of material, which she quickly sent from North Carolina to Florida. So yes, I pulled out the kids, feeling nervous, feeling insecure, not sure if I was doing the right thing. But you know what? I remember meeting a woman once at the Catholic schools the girls had attended. She was attending a party there because she attended the church. However, her children did not attend the school. She had homeschooled all 13 of her children. Oh my goodness. I don't know how people do that. And I know they do it on a regular basis, but yeah, 13 kids. She has homeschooled all of them. She was still homeschooling, in fact. Out of the 6 that had gone out to college, 3 of them had gone on to Ivy League schools on full scholarships. Now, this woman had only gone to high school. And when I was talking to her, she said, I learned more by teaching than I did when I was a student myself. When I was a student, I only went as far as pre-algebra in math. But as a homeschool mom, I taught calculus. And clearly she taught it really well. And here I was, a retired college professor, afraid of my kids. That just seemed silly. What I told myself at that point was, if that mom could do it and do it so successfully, I could do it too. And besides, I was only planning on homeschooling the elementary school years. I was planning on putting them back in that Montessori school as soon as they hit the 6th grade. So they would have 6th, 7th, and 8th there, and then they would move on to the high school. Of course, things change. I've homeschooled 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and now I'm homeschooling 8th grade. And I have to tell you, my kids are not geniuses. They're not. We work, and we work hard. And every year, at the end of the year, they're tested by the state. Emmy is typically in the 99th percentile for language arts and in the 98th for math. Andy is in the 99th for math and in the 98th for language arts. Dedication, commitment, hard work. Now, I've talked to the girls several times about going to high school next year. We're a little nervous about the pandemic. We're very hopeful about the vaccine being available soon. But the reality is that the girls are not interested. And they're not interested because they have an incredible, active social life. Emmy is writing at college level. Andy is 1 point away from writing at college level. We've adopted 2 children who 2 years ago spoke no English. Dora now, after only a year and a half, is testing at the 99th percentile for math and at grade level for language arts. And she did not speak English 2 years ago. But he's just barely done with preschool and entering kindergarten. More games, more fun than anything else. So far, we've considered our homeschool journey a success for our family. We've met our goals, and we're very happy with the results. What we'll do next year for high school, I have to be honest with you about that. We're not sure, but the girls are certainly advocating for continuing to homeschool and doing dual enrollment at the community college. If you liked our show, I hope you will subscribe and download so we can continue to stay in touch. I would really like to join our journeys together. So, whether you're an old pro or you're just embarking on your homeschool journey, I hope you will join us in this sometimes crazy, always fun homeschooling journey by subscribing to our podcast or blog. For links and resources, please visit our website. Till next time, enjoy your kiddos.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Homeschooling with Dr. B. Head over to homeschoolingwithdrb.com for more information and resources. That's homeschoolingwithdrb.com. Until next time.